Yeah, all good.
We also need to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. So everyone who is in favor of approving, could you raise your hands?
Okay, yeah, go.
Yes.
In the section where it talks about Medway students perhaps feeling underrepresented, it says that I said that our focus is Canterbury students, but I said the opposite of that, that our focus should be not just Canterbury students, which is why I suggested before, but in the minutes it doesn't come out like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So what do we do now, Rory, with that?
What we can do, the amendment essentially, so fortunately, then I think we can make this amendment approve the rest of the pattern.
the rest is fine.
Okay, so once again, with this amendment, do we approve the minutes?
Yeah, that's, Maureen and Titi, you both happy to approve the minutes as well? Yeah. Yes, the minutes approved.
Before we jump into the industrial action strike discussion, I just wanted to kind of quickly take you guys back to what we mentioned at the end of the last session and what Riley talked about at the start of the last session. So obviously, we want this to be a space where everyone can come in, have open discussion, have the ability to raise concerns and shape union policy. But I just want to remind you to do that in a fair manner, treat everyone with respect, be nice to each other, especially today, because it's probably going to be a slightly more heated discussion. So whilst we want everyone to voice their opinions, keep that in mind, please. But with that, let's jump into the UCU industrial action and late.
Hi guys,
Hi guys.
welcome back to another edition of this action. So, I hope everyone's read the paper that was sent out. It basically goes through the strike consultation and the forum that we conducted. I'd like to just quickly bring everyone back and reiterate what the strikes are about. So UCU, which is the University and College Union, they represent all staff in further higher education, and they recently voted on a further round of industrial action. Now, this current mandate of industrial action was voted on nationally, and the vote was aggregated, meaning members across all UCU branches took basically balloting on the action. So on the 21st of October, they voted in favor of taking industrial action, and then did two separate ballots, one on pay and working conditions and one on cuts to pension. Now, in the pay and working condition ballot, the yes vote for strike action was 81.1%, and the turnout was 57.8%. And the pension ballot, the yes vote for strike action was 84.9%, and the turnout was 60.2%. Now, these mandates mean they are effective from 6 months from the last day when the ballot was closed. And this means that the ballot closed on 21st of October of 2022, and they should last and expire until the 21st of April 2022.
2023.
2023, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so for this bout of industrial action, there's been agreed that it will be a total of 18 days of strikes across February and March. The first day of strikes will be this Wednesday, and it coincides with the Right to Strike Day. That is something that a lot of different unions across the country are taking part in, especially to protest the government's kind of proposition to remove some of these rights to strike that staff and employees have. So I'll just read the dates. So like I said, Wednesday, 1st of February, on the second week, so next week, it'll be the Thursday and the Friday. The week after that, it will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. The week after that, it will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday again. Week number 5, we'll see an increase in action. So it'll be 4 days. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. The week following that, there is no action. And then we have week 6 with 2 days on Thursday and Friday. And then week 7, 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And that will wrap up roughly around the 22nd of March. So when we look at these dates on a calendar, we can see that particularly Tuesdays and Thursdays are really heavily affected. We, like Zed has mentioned, we have been consulting students. Quite a few students have raised concerns around the very low levels of contact hours that they're going to have, especially those people that have the vast majority of the lectures on a Thursday or a Tuesday, where action is going to be repeated across a number of weeks. Action short of strike as well has been announced from the first bout of industrial action. So it started on the 23rd of November, and that is still ongoing. And just as a reminder, action short of strike basically means that it's anything short of not working that day. So it might be working to contract hours, it might be not releasing materials on time, it might be removing materials from Moodle, refusing to reschedule any missed teaching, and refusing to cover staff absences and not undertaking any voluntary activities. On top of this, UCU has announced their intentions to go on an assessment and marking boycott, which is something that we're familiar with. We saw it happening last year. However, I just want to make the clarification that the dates that they're suggesting comes towards the end of April. So that will not be covered by the 6-month mandate that the ballot was voted on in October. So that means that if they do have to go on an assessment and marking boycott, they're going to have to reballot that. So that's not what we're discussing today. However, I do encourage you to keep that intention to go on an assessment and marking boycott in mind. But yeah, that's just much. And then the student consultation, do you want to go through that?
So the student consultation that we carried out, we did it in a bit of a different way to how we did before, to be able to get a wider view of the student body. A lot of people still don't know what industrial action is about, what strikes are about, and we see that we have tried our hardest in terms of our social media, in terms of the communication that we put out to our members to make sure that people are as aware as possible about what it means to go on strike and why UCU is taking industrial action. So the student consultation that we had, we did one consultation in Nexus, we did student consultation at our big fair, and we did an online strike forum. And from that, members who have seen the paper can see at Nexus, we basically walked around as well and spoke to students to be able to get a wide view. And we separated into 3 categories: who support the cause and the action, you support the cause but not the action, and you neither support the cause nor the action. And from that, in Nexus, we saw 30 students support the cause and the action, 56 supporting the cause but not the action, and 4 in support of neither. At the big fair, which is the largest consultation that we had, 93 were in support of the cause and the action, 83 were in support of the cause but not the action, and 7 were in support of the cause, neither the cause nor the action. And the online strike forum saw 6, with 1 in support of both and 5 in support of the cause but not the action.
I just wanted to, before we go into like the final numbers of this, some people might be wondering, and I know because students asked us, like, what does it mean to support the cause but not the action? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It means that we sympathize, it means that we understand the struggles that are going on, but we also recognize the really big impact that it has on us as students. And what that vote basically means is students prioritizing their experience, even though they sympathize with staff and they sympathize with the people that are teaching them and the support staff in the schools and divisions. However, they recognize that the impact on themselves is just too big to support both the action and cause. But yeah, and then I guess just to wrap up, the final numbers for support of both, so the cause and the action, is 124 students. Supporting the cause but not supporting the action is 144 students. Supporting neither is a total of 11. And all of that adds up to 279 students that took part in the voting process.
Also, I'll quickly say that the guillotine for this debate is set at 30 minutes. We've got over 20 minutes left right now, just so you guys know.
And if you look on the paper as well, for people who are visual learners, it is displayed in the lovely little pie chart, so you can see the distribution of the consultation. We've also took down basically what division the students are from, so you can actually see the breakdown by division of the students. So for supporting both the cause and the action, Austin Humanities came out to be the largest division in support of it. Obviously, you know, this is only for the 279 students we did, so it's that representation. And if you look at the support the cause but not the action, it's quite a balanced divide between the divisions. And for support of neither, it is very much HSS and LSOJ that have the largest view on that sense. And we also did like an Instagram post, which also is shown as a pie chart there. Now there are two statements on there, one in support, one not in support. This is just kind of, you know, something we've already been through when we did our last discussion on industrial action. So now it's over to you guys, I think. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, not really. I think it'd be worth us sitting down again.
Yeah.
Because it's all-round discussion and we don't want to.
So yeah, it's over to yours. Thank you.
Doors open.
Back to you. Go ahead.
I'm the Amateur Student Network chair, and we did a poll among, you know, from well, just mature students who are actually members of MATSOC. So out of, we got 130 of the total members of MATSOC that responded, but with respect to the mature students, the numbers in favour of the strike was quite high. It was 75.5, with roughly similar against, or really not sure which way to go. It's a slightly different demographic. And it might be because mature students might have been working before they started their degrees and they might have a slightly different perspective, but it is just a different cohort. So it's a very different sort of, you know, about the sort of, yeah, the weighting is very different. That's what I was trying to say.
That's really good context, I think. A lot of it, I guess, from my views and from conversations that we have with students, it tends to be, you know, your typical, you know, 18-year-old first year student that, you know, doesn't really understand why this is happening. Especially, I think a lot of the students that we consulted have been really heavily affected during the school years, and especially when you put in light and you add everything up, it's only normal, I think, that they're going to have a very different view. But I think that's really interesting, and thank you so much for doing that consultation.
I think another thing is that a lot of younger people are in jobs that are zero hours contract, ununionised, and so that might be something that people haven't had much experience of. So yeah, there are massive differences between the groups. So I do appreciate that as well.
I think for us, it's really interesting if we could discuss the kind of action that we would like to take as a parliament, because obviously supporting or not supporting is just a stance. It doesn't necessarily mean an action. And I think that we can do really significant things choosing either stance. For example, if we choose to not support the strikes, but we support the cause, we can still go out and write letters to Karen Cox, unite students to talk about it and the importance of the issues that they're facing, and encourage negotiations with the university. That's a really important power that we hold as a students' union. And we don't necessarily need to support the strikes that are happening and the impact that has on our student body. So I think it'd be really cool if we could come up with action points for both us officers, but also you as parliament members, because you hold so much power. So if anyone has any suggestions, I'm open to them.
I just thinking about that, like I totally understand where you're coming from. I think that it is good for us to think action points as well. But my only issue is that if we choose to not support the strikes and then we're still supporting the action, I just don't see how UCU are going to see it as supporting the action but not the strikes, because at the end of the day, it feels like action in support is kind of done at the end of a shotgun. Does that make sense?
Just to respond to that, I think the message that we bring across is that we would strongly encourage UCU not to take the extreme action of striking, we would urge them to go at it in different ways, like with less aggressive methods that have such an impact on students. Because if we show that we can reach some kind of compromise with the university through these other options, I think that would be really positive moving forward to avoid strikes, because the last 3 cohorts of students, maybe even 4 or 5, have seen such negative student experiences, especially our final years now. So I think it would show UCU that we understand their problems, like we're totally here to support them. We're also a union, we get it, but we just don't want them to go at it the way that they're currently doing it because of the impact it has on students.
Nicholas?
Yeah, so like my point of view is that I generally disagree with the idea of using students as some kind of tool, because students cannot affect the decisions, and they're haven't chosen like how much people will be paid. And I think it would be interesting to encourage others to think for different ways to do the pressure, such as you mentioned, to write letters, and you can do it in sort of campaign when you actually encourage other students across the campus to do that, or perhaps I don't know to what extent it's like possible, but also money go for the research. So maybe the lecturers or professors can do the boycotts like for this way rather than through like canceling lectures. It's really trying to be constructive and help, but not trying to disrupt education.
Good.
Yeah, I guess just to add to it, I think the level of disruption is clearly prompting the university to get in conversations. It's not like the university is refusing to speak with ECU. They've been in conversations even since before the first bout of strike action happened, you know, the other side of Christmas break. And I think it's really important for us to highlight that this is a national ballot. So regardless of how much we do at Kent, if nationally they reballot to continue striking, staff are going to continue striking. Whether we support it or not, that's going to continue happening. I don't see it with the climate that unions have in this country at the moment. I don't see strikes stopping on a national level. And I think, you know, sometimes UCU can have very, very high demands, which I'm not saying that they should lower their demands, but sometimes they can be quite unreasonable when they get in these discussions with the university. There's only so much that the university can offer. The university is also not doing amazing financially. We're all going through a cost of living crisis. It's not just staff members and you know, academics at the university. We're all going through it. And I think that the level of pressure that it adds on everyone else is just simply not worth it when then you get into conversations with them being unreasonable. There's no way of moving forward in that sense, which I think is quite difficult. And we can't just, I'm of the view that we can't just blindly support something that is impacting our students so negatively. And while I do recognize that we got students who are both staff and students, like GTAs, hourly paid lecturers, we, you know, by not supporting strikes doesn't mean that we won't support our students. Our students are still students and we will still be fighting for them regardless of what Parliament chooses to do in terms of our stance. But yeah, I think it's important to have that context as well, that sometimes negotiations and discussions are really, really, really difficult when you know, the side that holds the power, which in this case is UCU. UCU holds the power at the moment, when they are being, you know, just, I don't know, unreasonable is a very strong word, but like when they're being very, very stubborn in their demands, you know, and they don't recognize the context that we're all living in, it's quite difficult to engage in those conversations and get, you know, meaningful change happening, really.
Dr. Bakamura?
Sorry, my kind of opinion on this is that these particular, because we're going on like this set of strikes coming in next month, especially with Wednesday being the kind of right to vote the strike day, that this particular set of strikes is really important for us to support it. And with the way that like negotiations are going and with the way that like I know support has been shown, it's even a possibility that like all of the strike days might not even happen. And I feel like looking at this with like the idea that there will be more striking in the future is kind of like, our support is the thing that's like helping with, you know, ending these strikes, I feel like. And I feel like us, if we were to like not support, that's what caused them to continue for longer.
That's what to say.
I completely hear everyone's concerns. I just want to highlight two things. Firstly, that in the previous years when we've had industrial action here at Kent, it's been local issues, so the local branch of demands, and they have worked. Like strikes have been proven throughout history to work to, you know, change things and really make working lives better. This issue, however, we have to look at it from a perspective that we are representing students, right? So this style of strike action for 18 days is some of the most extreme strike action we've seen at Kent, right? It is something that people have not even fathomed how important it could be. There are people that have spoken to me that have said that they've had 2 induction lectures and teaching events, and until the end of this term, they will not have a single teaching event for one of their modules because it coincides with the strike day every single week. So that means that they're missing out an entire module because of these dates that have been announced. Now, the other thing I want to highlight is, as Lupe said, this is a national issue, right? So nationally speaking, this debate, this argument between UCU isn't against every university, it's against UCL, which is the University College Employers Association, who set the pay for staff around the country. And then also USS, which is the pension scheme, the National Pension Scheme, and University UK. Now, UCL in the past week, I think, made an offer to UCU on 4 to 5% pay increase. Yes. And UCU flat out rejected it straight away without even considering it. And that is the final offer that UCL made. So when you look at that, there is neither side are trying to back down or meet somewhere in the middle, which is what strikes are about. Strikes are about finding that middle ground and where you can actually, be able to confidently say that, okay, this is improved my working conditions, but also my employer has listened to me. That's what this is all about. So if neither side is going down, ultimately the people that are going to be impacted most negatively are students or the people that we are representing in this room right now. So we need to view it from that point rather than the point of, what will UCU say or what will the strike action, what's the point of it? That's what I was just trying to highlight there.
I actually completely agree. And going in response to Zed's point, but also back to Carol's point, I think that action points are needed from this session, but I think they need to be, whether we choose to support or not, I want to say, we need, in my opinion, to be focused on what is going to help students most at this time. And unfortunately, I've read the statements and I can't think of more ways to support students, but I also feel like it isn't enough. But I feel like we need to be lobbying the university perhaps in to do something to help these mitigating circumstances. And I'm not even talking about strikes, remove ourselves from that conversation in support or not. I'm one of those people, 3 of my modules, all my lectures are on Tuesday, and every single Tuesday pretty much is affected, which means 3 out of 4 of my modules, I might as well not be in education. So whether that means that we're going to be lobbying for financial compensation, and maybe that means getting in contact with other student unions across the country and turning this into a wider, national action thing. Because if national action is causing this, then perhaps national action is needed to remedy it for the students. And as well as that, perhaps talking to the university and seeing if there is any way that perhaps classes could be rescheduled for days that are not strike days, or if maybe something can be done in the 3rd term. I'm speaking from HSS, but a lot of our modules don't actually even have exams. So in the 3rd term, we have absolutely nothing on. I'm literally just here for fun in the 3rd term. And yet, all of my coursework is due. So if we can't even rearrange those, then perhaps the university will consider having all coursework deadlines extended by many weeks, because if we're gonna have to teach ourselves our entire course that we're paying for, then we may as well at least get an opportunity to still get a good grade.
Can I just respond to that quickly?
Thomas, could you quickly?
You want to go first?
It's just on that point. The thing is, all of those solutions are amazing and we will absolutely be lobbying them for them. However, UCU are engaging in action short strike, which means that they don't want to reschedule. So as much as the university asks staff to reschedule the classes, that's not going to happen. If we extend all the deadlines for assessment, amazing, that would be really great for students. But then if they vote to go on an assessment or marking boycott, what's the point? So at the end of the day, no matter how much the university tries to solve this, we rely on UCU coming to an agreement, and they don't seem to unless they get exactly what they want, which is just impossible in this climate. So yeah, I think
I'm just throwing stuff out.
no, but like that's what you know is really important, and those are the things that we're going to be working towards. However, we're unable to do them without UCU backing down and like taking terms and accepting the deals that the university is trying to make with them.
Well, yeah, the negotiation 4 or 5%, but even some lower salaries were offered even more. So I think the negotiations, I think they're being unreasonable to the point it's just, it's really bad. And I'm someone who supported the strikes the first round, but I've changed my mind now. I think when we were doing a consultation, speaking to students, attending the online forum, there was a lot of students who had great levels of anxiety, and this is on the back of the pandemic with online learning and other sort of, the cost of living as well. All these things are contributing to severe mental health issues for students, and it's this level of disruption is kind of, to me, unnecessary. So yeah, I would urge everyone to kind of really think about that before they decide to vote.
At the back of the room.
I'm happy to let him go first. I really want to see what he says.
I just wanted to put a procedural motion to look.
10 minutes?
15 minutes, because I think it's really important. Yeah.
Do we have anyone that's against, that wants to speak out against? No?
15 minutes?
Let's
Vote
vote.
on it.
Yes, let's vote on extending it 15 minutes.
Quick maths.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I'm trying to compare this strike, university strike with the train strike. I remember train strike, it did affect the travelers, and it wasn't the travelers' fault. It was government who wasn't paying them, but they just other way. There isn't a better way for train drivers to okay, so what I'm trying to say is that the government found another way for the travelers to get around. So I'm thinking, what if I do see the university professors, they're not getting paid as much as they wanted to and they deserve to. So I'm thinking, what if they get some other materials and get their information through? I can get my work done without having to be there. There's just, as long as I'm getting something that's at least get me somewhere, just the buses, or it's not going to get me there as faster as the train, but at least or something.
Okay.
But if you're paying for a train ticket, would you accept them giving you a bike and be like, yeah, take it back? You wouldn't. You'd be like, no, I paid for my train tickets. Students have paid so much money. We're getting ourselves into upwards of £30,000 of debt to be here. It's like I've said in previous Parliament sessions as well, is a irreplaceable opportunity. Doing your first undergraduate degree for the first time ever, being at university for the first time, getting a good education, that's something that you're not going to get again as a first experience. And while I do sympathise with a lot of the issues that staff are going through, I sympathise a lot more with people who are like me, with international students that have paid not upwards of £30,000, but I paid over £100,000 to be at university. That's crazy. To be impacted after paying that much money for something that I'm never going to get back, for something that this is going to sound really rough, but you know, being in academia is a choice that academics have made. They've gotten into this industry knowing that there is issues with it, knowing that, you know, they work in a bureaucratic institution, that things will take a long time to change. Like, they know what they've gotten themselves into. And same with students. We know what we've gotten ourselves into, which is a 3-year, you know, if you're an undergraduate, 3-year long education. That being disrupted was not part of the plans. And at the end of the day, it's not for students to pay for someone else's mistakes or someone else's decision. Like, no matter how much a student wants to change it, it's up to USS, it's up to UCL. It's not up to us, the students. We can't necessarily do much. All we're being at the end of the day is pawns in someone else's game. That's all we are. We're just tools that people use to get whatever they want, and that's not fair at the end of the day.
So to Lulu and then Karen.
Yeah, with what Luke saying, I agree, because with the train analogy, I totally appreciate we're getting at there. There's strikes, as we are seeing, across many industries, like firefighters announced they're going on strike today, nurses, paramedics, teachers, lecturers. But like that is what's happening, and part of that is a response to the fact that the government are actually trying to stop protests, including strike, and that's completely like out of question for me morally. But the thing is with the train strikes is that it's a privatized industry where you are, like I said, the trains are offered rail replacement buses. There are refunds as well, partial, if not full, like complete ones if you can't make your journey at all. And like Lupe is saying, it's not a train journey, and I understand people make train journeys for very complex and important reasons. But this is a knock-on effect. These are formative years, and even if you put aside the lovely humanist perspective of experience, like just in terms of actual education and development, this time in a student's life, but the education that you pay a lot of money for, you have no choice of different providers. It's not like I can go to get a bus or I can go to do this. It's like we have to get in debt with not the government, but a government company, which then charges interest, etc. And there's not being any refunds, and there's not being any kind of mitigation there. But also, like, they're not including students in the conversation at all. So I just think it's really difficult, but I am now kind of convinced that this is not the way forward. And also, the other thing I want to say, sorry, originally, was that you may be able to get on with your work and I may be able to. My work is mainly essay-based, but what about like science students who have to go to labs, who have to use engineering equipment, who have to use like, who literally need guided sessions because they're learning things that you can't just learn out of textbook. Some of us are more privileged, including myself, than others.
Do you have Megan?
I'm just offering like a student perspective from the postgraduate perspective.
Oh, Megan, I'm so sorry. Yes, Karen. Go on. So you go on.
Just giving nasty faces. I think it's also really important to highlight that one of the university's solutions as an alternative was to exclude content from exams that students hadn't been taught. But actually, when you think about it, final year students, say psychology students, who are really heavily affected, are going to need this knowledge and in their careers. So it's absolutely no use to them to not have it on their exams, because how are you going to be successful in your career if you don't know a third of the knowledge you need? It's absolutely it's like I'm sorry. Who's going to help me in 10 years' time when I had issues, when you haven't had the education, when you haven't had the training? And I also just really, once again, would like to say that whether we support the strike, if we choose to support the strike, we're not going to single-handedly end them. They're going to keep going. We are not the solution. As much as I would love to be, it's still going to be an issue, and it's just going to be a nice little opinion on our Instagram. Oh, we support the strikes. That's all it's going to be. So
sorry, Megan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that some of the feedback I've had from my postgraduate perspective. This, I think, it especially comes from psychology. People are really worried about strike action, actually.
because it was previously mentioned, but a lot of classes happen on a Tuesday or a Thursday. And there's basically like no hope because they know for certain that like their teachers are going to go on strike. Furthermore, part-time postgraduate students are already massively impacted anyway since they have less contact hours. Most of the postgraduate students I've spoken to, when they have said, my teacher's going on strike, and I said, well, how many lessons does that leave you with? It says, barely any. And again, it is just like the idea that, you know, postgraduate students, we've already been here a lot longer. We've seen pandemic, we've seen lots of strikes from, you know, like the first year during the pandemic when that happened. And we've just kind of had to take it on the chin, but we can't keep doing that because it clearly isn't having any kind of positive impact. You know, I mean, postgraduate students, our contact hours are already incredibly low. Like in total for 1 week, I have 4 hours. And you want us to for 18 days where you are just absent, where I'm struggling with my work. I have to do a dissertation. I don't know if my dissertation supervisor is actually going to be around to help. I don't know if they will be willing to help. And I have huge pieces of work I've never encountered in my entire life. And what I'm expected to do it by myself? No, not that. Absolutely not.
That's good to say, even then move on.
So I really appreciate the discussions that we're having. I think this is really important to get a proper view on this. I think as Starling said, whether we're in support or not in support, we aren't the people that will change the outcome of these strikes naturally, but we still do hold a bit of power. As students, our voice does matter. It only matters if we do it as a collective. And whether we are, you know, in support or not as a kid union, we as students do have the power to actually be out there and say, the uni, this is actually not okay, like this is not helping anyone. And we as students demand that you come to an agreement. And that's nationally, it's not just us here at Kent. From our end, from Kent Union's end, we will not stop, you know, as officers lobbying the university for mitigation, not just academically, but also financially. You know, making sure that you're compensated, and like we will be fighting for that. We don't know how possible that is on this in this financial like economic environment we're in, but we will be fighting for it, and we will still be here to support you regardless. Whatever happens next, we as officers are on the side of students, and that's what we've always been as. This is our job. This is why we ran, why we represent students. We're here to make sure that your experience can be the best it possibly can be in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And I think the best thing to do as parliament members as well is really want to reiterate this. As you are going along these next few weeks, any events that you miss or any one that comes up to you and tells you that you're missing events, please report it using the academic experience reporting tool on the website. And also make sure to, like, if you can't use that, drop us an email, write it down, send it to us. So we have a track as well, because a lot of the time lecturers and staff, they don't have the legal responsibility to tell you that they're going on strike. They don't have to tell you, they can just not turn up, and sometimes those things aren't recorded. If we keep a track of it alongside the university, we're able to actually make sure we have the database to say, this is what has been missed by students, this is what students are missing in terms of teaching events, in terms of lecture, you know, seminars, whatever. And we can go back to them and be like, these are the students that need compensation because they have not gotten the education that they paid for. Simple as.
Keep your receipts as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So the university has like compensation as well for people that, you know, might have to commute to uni, people that might have kids and might need to pay for like a babysitter or like, you know, a nursery to keep the children in during the days that these come. If that happens to anyone that you know, please spread the word. People need to keep the receipts because they can get refunded for caring payments and also for travel. And I was going to say something else, but I completely forgot. So I'll let someone else go on there when I remember.
We have Miguel, then Louise, and
I think we see how you handle that. No, you go. No, you go. No, forget one point. Yes, okay. Yes, so I just start off with the PGR perspective, which is that like it's not a very positive time at the moment. I know from my perspective, it's talk to other students, talk to other PGR students, my winter buddy, actually, I'm not going to mention his name, but he was a lecturer in the arts and humanities, and now he's doing his degree in business because he just doesn't see it as financially stable for him and secure for him. So I definitely see it's kind of change in this kind of lack of optimism about the future of higher education. That's what I wanted to start with. But I do want to go on to my second point, which is just about this idea that, yeah, I think what Kent Union is, and I think probably most universities or kind of unions are missing, is that kind of discussion of the national level with UCEA and UK. I mean, we're very lucky that our Vice Chancellor does sit on the board of UK, so she can have some input on that discussion about pensions. But in terms of the UCEA, it's very difficult because, as Louis said, their demands are, well, they have demands anyway. And I was going to say that it was actually really weird, like reading that the UCEA actually claimed that the demands of the UCU were an April Fool's joke when discussing their offer. So it's not a very positive time at the moment. So, but I think what we're getting kind of muddled up with, and I think that's why it's really good to kind of discuss it, is that we are getting muddled up in this idea that students, I think particularly undergrads who don't fully understand the strikes, believe that Kent can create the change. But as you said, this is happening at a national level with UCEA, with USS, with UUK, sorry. And that, sorry, look at me notes. I think that should be clarified that, like, these issues can't be solved on a local level. Obviously, Kent is doing what it can. Like, I know that they have increased the annual pay rise for 3% for all staff at least. The Vice Chancellor's salary has not increased from 2021 to 2022. And I very much. But I think we also need to be looking at the larger picture here, which I do believe is about education in the UK and where we are headed, and that these strikes aren't just about what's happening within these 18 days. I know that's what we're discussing, but I think in the bigger picture of what this means, it's not just about that, it's also about where we're headed. Because I know, according to the HESA, the financial statements for all across all universities have reserves of £46.8 billion as of 2022. And obviously that I don't know what we can do with it. I don't know what the solution is, because this isn't a local thing, it's been happening at a national level. But yes, if we can continue to kind of, not pressure, but we can continue to kind of have the discussion at the national level. And yes, we're just a students' union at the end of the day. We can create that kind of change that I think will happening there. But that's why I said this is the, sorry, not very quickly, but I said this at the previous parliament, that we have the NUS and we have 4 NUS delegates who have been elected here who will be there. And obviously this is an issue affecting students nationally. So I think this is something that can be happening at that national level. But in terms of my personal stance is that I do support it just because I empathize and I really feel with the struggles of being a PGR student in this kind of climate and the work that staff are doing. But yes, sorry, that was kind of, I don't know if that made any sense, but yes.
Going back to Sed's point about getting student voice out, it was actually one of the lowest scoring things in the National Student Survey in all departments. It was ranging from 5% to 50% that students considered that their voices were heard. And like from law to business, bioscience, and even sports was very low. But most of the students didn't think their voices were being heard. What was that then?
No, I was just talking about, I didn't mean anything.
I love different matters. But we need to raise this and make the lecturers aware that the student voice is not being heard anymore, and it's actually going down even further from the last 5 years. I did my homework. So student voice needs to be heard a lot more these days.
Just so you guys know, we've got what, 3 minutes left in the guillotine, so then.
I will start off by saying perhaps pass the procedural motion to extend the guillotine by another 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 sounds good.
Do we have anyone that wishes to speak out against? No? Then let's vote.
Time for some maths again.
Passed.
My question is a very quick one, ultimately, to sort of get the overarching perspective of what Miguel and Megan have said from a PGR and PGT perspective. So the PGR side I've sort of spoke to about strikes, you tend to have a sort of coin toss. Some of them are already members of UCU, and obviously it's off the strike because of that. However, you do actually even have some of the PGR bodies seem to view it negatively after their supervisors going on strike, and they sort of lose that 18 days of contact with them. But that tends to be a little rarer. The PGT side, at least that I've spoken to, seems to be predominantly against in some cases, but especially amongst something Lupe highlighted earlier, the international community, where you've got the international PGTs. So, for example, a KBS PGT might pay something like 21,000 pounds or so for that 1 year of their education. And understandably, they're like, okay, I've come in some cases halfway across the world, and now I'm losing half of that teaching. So it wasn't a point to say was anecdotal evidence of what I've heard from the PGT and PGR community.
If we go to C, then Lupe and you.
I have just a few things to add to Miguel's point as well, where he mentioned, this is not in support of the Vice Chancellor, but I'm just like putting out the information. The Vice Chancellor's pay has an increase this year, but she hasn't taken a pay rise since she started as Vice Chancellor, not once. Even though they're paid massively, but it does show because every university's Vice Chancellor takes a pay rise or year on year to meet like the kind of market average, because otherwise if the Vice Chancellor leaves, it's very hard to recruit another Vice Chancellor. But that's a point here. Kent has been in a very bad financial position for a very long time. And when you look at the statements, it's insane because you really can't even figure out how it's going wrong, but it's going wrong. So we don't have any money. We don't have money to get pay rises, but they're still in conversations. Just saying that. The second point I had was in the statements, it's very much highlighted, and I want to really kind of make this clear and make it evident, maybe put in the minutes, because in the non support statement, it says what will Kent Union do? First, we will be a source of information for students and raise student concerns throughout the industrial action. We are committed to doing all we can to mitigate the impact on students' education and welfare, including actively lobbying for students to receive fair compensation where possible. Lobby the university to ensure appropriate academic mitigation for students impacted, and we'll be offering support to students through our student reps, our advice service, and through your full-time offices. This will include organization of student forums throughout and beyond any strike period for students to raise concerns and questions regarding mitigation. And we will also support students to make complaints against the university through our advice service. We are completely independent and confidential, and our advice service can do that. That is something that we have power to. And we will also encourage students to talk to staff about the strike action. This stated here is genuinely like some of the best things that we can do as a students' union to be able to support the cause, to be able to actually fight for better pay, working conditions, better pensions for not just teaching staff here, but staff all across the country. It is a right to strike in this country, and it's for a reason. It's a democratic right. And the government right now is very much in that position where they feel like they can overpower that. And we as people should not allow that to happen. So I do want to make it very clear that the not in support of this strike action statement does not mean we are not in support of strikes in general.
I guess I wanted to touch on like the whole bigger picture aspect. Like, whose bigger picture are we talking about? Are we talking about UCU's bigger picture and what their view of education should be? Are we talking about the bigger picture that an individual student might have of, wanting to come to university, get the degree, and then go into a career completely unrelated? Why should they compromise their bigger picture for someone else's, especially someone that a lot of the times has never had to pay a single penny to go to university? Let's remember that university used to be free about 10, 12 years ago. University used to be completely free. So those people that graduated back then, they never had those £36,000 of debt. They've never understood what it's like to get themselves into debt to come and get their education. And I think that we can't put staff's bigger picture above our students' bigger picture, because at the end of the day, it says it in the name, we're a students' union, not a staff's union. And we ultimately need to honour and represent the views of what our students say. And from the consultation, from conversations, from the past 5 years of industrial action just impacting everyone's life, you know, our support doesn't really change much. If you look just at last year, we supported the first 2 bouts of industrial action. We did not support the assessment and marking boycott. The only thing that got resolved was the assessment and marking boycott, and we had absolutely nothing to do with that. It was literally the universities doing it and UCU coming to an agreement. So support doesn't mean that we will solve the problem. And I just want everyone to keep in mind who we represent, who we're here to support, whose views we need to take into consideration when we're making these really important decisions. Yeah, so.
I did just want to follow up on something that was said about like in terms of vice chancellor pay not going up, etc. And that would be that even though it has not gone up necessarily, I do believe in the year that I joined a rather large bonus package was given. And also there are like literally news articles available about how ridiculous some of the expenses are, which includes like 71k on flights.
So the previous vice chancellor.
Yeah.
Before Carrie.
But like but it's not just the vice chancellor either. It's also deputy chancellors, etc., which are still in their jobs now. But like this is the university as a whole approving this money, and like some of this is less than 5 years old, and so we're saying if we're in a 60 million deficit or higher, like that's not something that happened this year.
Just to respond to that quickly, it's not like they're spending that money to go, and I'm not defending the university, I'm just putting it into perspective. The vice chancellor, just by being herself brings hundreds and thousands of pounds of investment into the university, just by being our vice chancellor alone. And that's why vice chancellors get paid so much, because they got such big connections, they sit on national boards, they have the biggest, most powerful networks that you could imagine, and they bring, like I'm saying, if not millions of pounds of investment for research or in order to fund PGRs.
But I'm not necessarily talking about like, I'm talking about a spending pattern, and I'm not just talking about employment spending patterns. Yeah. I'm talking like we have seen money be spent in ways that could have been, in opinions, spent in different directions. And also we've commented before in this parliament about a lack of transparency in how money is spent. So I can kind of, and also as we just said, the response with like it's an April Fool's, but then seeing some of the things that we've spent money on look like a genuine April Fool's, in my opinion. You can see why UCU are actually taking quite an aggressive stance. Like we can say that UCU and the university are backing down, but I think there's like a bit more of a systematic problem, and I can't say as to whether this is like a national systematic problem. I can probably guess, but certainly in terms of Kent, I think like if spending cuts are going to be made, like maybe we should be looking at where money is being spent. Obviously, hotels and flights are unavoidable, but what hotels and what flights are being chosen and what other services included? And then it's like literally the year before last year, didn't Kent like fire 20% of its staff?
It wasn't fired, it was compulsory, it was voluntary redundancy.
Yeah, I know, but my child was one of them, but she told me about the whole process, and I can assure you, like, it wasn't that voluntary, because what happened is for months and months and months, they kept them on strings, and they told them, like, oh, well, one person from this department will keep their job, but they wouldn't say who. And bearing in mind, we were in a recession, and this is when furlough was happening, you had to be in a job for 6 months to even be on furlough. So like the job market was already like closed up. People couldn't even look for jobs in that time because they didn't know if they were going to need to look for a job. And then they turn around, like as they make everyone redundant and go, no, we're going to keep you. When that person may have already found a job elsewhere, and then they have to choose. And then the majority of people don't have them. And also the chaos that it caused. Like it was a voluntary redundancy, I get that. But then the person who's been kept on strings for months and months, if they then chose not to accept the job, they got no redundancy package. None.
So you quickly go and then we'll go.
Really quickly responding to that as well. I completely understand. Like, it is horrible how they spend the money sometimes, and you look at it and you get shocked. Even like in the years of COVID, obviously all travel was halted. They saved so much money on that.
last year, there's something that, we saw as well, is they were no longer allowed for like international trips until, I think just very recently. So last year, 2021, they didn't allow for any like international trips in a sense for marketing purposes. For like research, that's different. That's a separate situation. But in terms of the over marketization of universities, we've seen it over the last decade how universities have become businesses more than educational institutions that they are, right? They're charities, but they no longer consider that because the way each university is laid out, depending on your ranking and your position in the country, that is how much funding you receive from the government. And when you don't have that much funding, majority of the funding has to be made out by fees, has to be made out by commercial outlets, has to be made out by investments, things like that. So the University of Kent actually is one of the universities that it has majority of its income made up from tuition fees and commercial operations. Whereas universities like Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, all these, Russell Group universities get massive amounts of funding, so they're able to function a lot better in a lot better ways than universities like ours who are like pre-92 universities.
Sorry.
So there's 3 different types, pre-92 universities.
Okay.
So where we're like
The Russell Group's pre-92 and post-92s.
Yeah.
So it's like 92 out in the rankings.
No,
No, you know,
90
that
before
before 1992 and after 1992.
But as a university, like I've really deep dived into the like financial statements, having sat on council, having sat on these boards, and it's insane. And those are things we're already having conversations with them on that they need to be able to be a lot more transparent with where they're spending their money. It is very difficult because the university wants to obviously conceal things like £71,000 on their travel things, but there are things that we are trying to do. So I did want to just like highlight that.
Whereas it'd be a lot easier to just say, yeah, we spent the 71,000 on trips for this many staff members, and that helped us recruit 100 students, which ends up being £9 million in income for the university.
But it's not the trip that I would take issue with. It's like what I told them stayed at in the trip, because like they're refusing to, like even now on.
Yeah, but that would be
historic-
like just getting into the nitty-gritty of it. What you need to look at is the return on investment. It doesn't really matter.
Well, it does matter if you're spending like £4,000 on a first grand, but on a first class flight, say,
I
versus
don't
like
think that they are.
40 on economy.
I think they are very economical. We have to keep that in mind. Like they were not spending like £5,000 on a hotel room. That's not gonna happen. But obviously they wouldn't tell you like, oh, we're staying at this hotel, we stayed here, we flew to this airline. But they are obviously very careful with it. Even we know like when the university does make even research trips, they will make sure they plan it out as cost effective as possible.
Yeah.
It is, I think I said, the return on investment that really counts, because if you're spending all this money and getting nothing back for it,
Yeah.
that is very economical.
You should think about it's a business case at the end of the day, and I think we're getting into too much detail that doesn't.
Yeah. But all I meant to highlight was the fact that like clearly there is a transparency issue, and as you have said before and you've reiterated now, like you are working with or trying to work with the university on that. But what I really mean is that I can see why the outside perspective of the layman who maybe doesn't have as much access to the knowledge as officers would then be like, oh, okay, so a 45 pay rise isn't enough. So like, if they're not going to be willing to meet that, then maybe that should be one of our action points. The fact that this is one of the reasons why there needs to be more transparency, because UCU, perhaps if there was more transparency, they would see that like there is no way that the university can get money, because they can see where the money is going, and therefore they're like, there physically isn't anything. I don't know, maybe that's hopeful.
But
Just about the bigger picture, yeah. I know what you mean by that, Miguel, and you're talking about the future of academia and attracting people to that profession, which I totally get. My division is under threat. Arts and humanities, definitely. So that's, I've got quite strong opinions on that. Not that I bring them into here, because I'm only going on what my mature student family said to me. But yeah, I totally get that. And the thing about student loans, even people of my age had to pay student loans. They've been around for a long, long time, so it's not been free for an awful long time, unfortunately.
We had a few more points, but we have reached the time. So, do we have anyone that wants to speak or it's any beginning?
No, but can I call a procedural motion to have a secret ballot?
Yes. Anyone that wants to speak out against? Yeah.
Does anyone need a reason why? Anyone that might be new to men and white might want to know why it's a secret ballot?
This is what. Just to make sure that everyone knows what.
Yeah. So it just means that we will try our best to avoid anyone feeling peer pressured by seeing how other people vote, because we understand it's a very sensitive topic. Some people, might be representing the students, but might not share the same personal opinion as the people that they represent. So we want to make sure that everyone feels safe to vote in the way that feels the best and most productive for them and the particular demographic that they represent. And it just, are we doing the little codes?
Yes,
Yeah.
we are. So same as before. So there's a poll set up on a web page. I'll post the link into the chat. I'll then give out a voting code. So to vote, you just basically follow the link. You can vote on your own device, pop in the code. Or yes, yeah. First of all, we need to obviously vote for it. I'm just explaining how it would work. And yeah, I would also basically, if you don't have a device on you, I'll set it up so you can vote up here on my laptop by the same process. And the members who are attending virtually as well will be able to vote by a secret ballot. So I think we need see if there's an opposer first of all.
Is there an opposer? No?
I do just want to open up to the floor. I'm not necessarily opposing it, but I do just want to ask, is it not worth considering perhaps not doing a secret? Well, I want to see what your opinions are, simply because like this is something that students clearly have a lot of opinions on, and therefore they might want accountability in terms of like knowing that whoever is meant to be representing here is doing so in the way that is like what we've got from the data, or I don't know.
I guess to counteract that, it might also protect people, because this is a very split decision and they might just be going off of a very small margin, and then you would have a lot of very angry people directing a lot of anger to a single person as well. And it does get published, not who voted for what exactly, but the final numbers get published. So if it is an overwhelming majority, it means that everyone is a bit more protected, not to avoid accountability, but just to avoid what can be a very tricky conversation to have with certain people that just don't agree, because obviously you might represent a bunch of people that have different opinions, but we only get one vote.
Yeah.
So I think, but we get a vote on it anyway. So if anyone agrees with Lulu, feel free to vote.
Caroline?
I was just going to say there, we could also discuss the option of voting secretly, so no one's peer pressured in this room, and then publishing the results, like on the website of who voted what at the end, if people would like to have their names. Is that possible?
I only really wanted to raise it for discussion. I'm not necessarily opposed. I don't use it, and I think that it allows us to take more collective responsibility than individual one, based on what you said. So I'm not actually opposed.
Information would add the number, right?
Yeah. No, we wouldn't be able to administer that because.
But we could Teams message you like we did a couple.
No, but we're allowed to publish it. So it has to be either secret or public.
Maybe.
Right. With that, could I have everyone raise their hand if you support voting through a secret ballot?
Maureen, yep.
Sorry, could you just keep us hands up?
Yeah, it's unanimous. So. Yes,
these are codes.
Yes, yeah, they're codes. So what I'll do is so I'm gonna basically set it up now. So basically we'll be voting on a poll online, and basically in order to vote you need basically this one the code here which you pop in. That's like a form of authentication. Keep it all secure. It means you can only vote once. I'm going to pop the link to the poll in the chat. So this means that you can, once you have this, you can vote on your own device. If you don't have a device with you, then I'm going to basically set it up so you can vote on my laptop here. And for Maureen, I'm going to send you your code. And like I said, the link will be in the chat. So you can click on it and I'll send you your code and you can go in and vote that way. Brilliant, thank you. Once you've voted, if you could feel free to, if you return the code to me, yes, sir?
Can I just have a quality check, just to make sure we're
Yes, and Titi dropped off the call. We're currently at 17.
Oh, right.
So we are for it, so we can vote.
Thank you.
No, something for clarity.
Can I just talk about what's the question or like the proposal?
It's
There's no confusion.
I think question.
I think it says in support, not in support, and
Abstain.
abstain.
Yeah, yeah, so you have three options, you support, not support, abstain. Yeah. Any other questions at all? Whereas in that case, I'll go and give out these tokens.
Thank you.
You want to Thank you so much.
Oh, that's. Even though no, I don't trust you.
I do apologise, now I'm not seeing this for next.
What's the name of the website? Oh,
Has everyone even members got one of these in the room? You got one of these?
Get it done.
Guys, does everyone have a code?
Yes.
Yes,
chef.
Yes, chef.
That's so low. No, big event.
No, they actually say that in restaurants. They don't know, but like, it's all music. And everybody like incredible. Everyone. It's like a movie. But I say I'm half the strike when it's always so in the grass. So yeah. Let's go to the next class. Oh, yeah, really good, really. Oh, wait, you know what's delicious? What? Yeah, it's not really cold. I don't know how I feel about it. I haven't watched it yet. What is it? Not what I just don't know if I can do it. So, you know, it's not much of a question. Kate. It's quite good. It's very well done, wasn't it? It's very. Well, I mean, I don't think about
That's just cookies.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you get any issues, you want to let me know.
You put it out? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Lupo.
Incredible.
So much for.
In balance.
Oh, this is Carolina's token.
Brilliant, thank you.
I'm international. I guess it could. Oh, okay. I want to see the lines and this.
James and.
Yeah, so you vote this.
I'm so sorry to like, but it's, when I try to do that, I've just like refreshed it, it says, when I try to do this, it says it's wrong, but I definitely read it.
You're on the wrong.
I'm on the wrong.
Poll earlier. So it's. the one in the
Apologies.
chat. So it should be specifically said customer action. So. The emergency session.
Oh.
So there, and then it's that one there. So you can. That should work, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I see. We've been there. Yeah.
Oh, it's- thank you. I just didn't want it to go on record that I was like, thank
Is that all right?
Have you voted?
Yeah, no, I'm still voting. Is that all right?
You need to tell us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it. I decided I was motion. Yeah. I was like, yeah.
So just, does anybody need to vote on my laptop at all? Or? No.
Does anyone need to vote on that laptop? No.
Thank you.
Yeah, please make most of what meetings. Drum roll, please.
Anybody's not here yet?
No, we haven't even finished it.
Oh.
Give it a little.
Thanks.
I don't know, you can steer it.
Hi.
Good, Miguel.
Slow motion.
Yeah,
I am ready for this.
Oh, are you waiting for me? I'm so sorry.
I have a feeling I know. No, it's. No, I'm just ignoring that.
I'm joking. Has everybody in the room voted? Any yet to vote?
Everyone got
Has everybody in the room voted? Maureen? Maureen, have you voted okay? Yep.
Drum roll.
So, yep, so everybody's voted. And Parliament has voted not in support of strike action, 13 votes not in support, 3 votes in support, and 1 which was to abstain. It's a simple majority required for a stance. So as a result, Parliament has decided not to support the announced industrial action.
With that, let's move on to member communications. So do we have any members?
Are we supposed to do officer updates?
Okay, so I won't take a big break. Basically, as you guys know, we're doing a lot of stuff with cost of living, to help support students. So, big part. So one of the things that we recognize here again is that there's a lot of food insecurity that students are finding it hard to feed themselves and sustain themselves throughout the day. So, the office team and I have been able to secure some funding to be able to provide free food to students from campus on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if you could please spread the word to any students you know, if they're on campus, they're able to get some free breakfast from campus. Mondays will be soup days, Tuesdays will be porridge days, and Wednesdays will be like noodle pot days. There will always be like a vegan option, so it fits that. Today's students were also gluten free, so you know, have that. They were so good. And yeah, this will be happening till we run out of money, so get it like you can.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, do you need like a student ID
No,
card?
just go up to campus for whatever.
And then bring hot chocolate too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hot chocolate. Also vegan hot chocolate, so.
I will help advertise as long as I'm not in working with
I get it, don't worry. And I think that was it from me. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, and I guess just the reiteration, it's really important that we get accurate records of how much people have been impacted. As we know, last year, and what we've negotiated with the university is that when staff go on strike, their salaries get withheld, so they don't get paid for the day that they go on strike. And then that is the money that the university is able to then give back to students in some way or another. That's where the bank payments came from last year, the very famous coffee voucher. Mad about.
Those are actually 1 million, man. We just spoke.
Oh yeah, that was on top of it, that we were like, at least give them something. Yeah, keep in mind that the more information that we have about how strikes have impacted students, especially in different divisions, the more we can do to support them. So please encourage everyone and anyone you know to fill out the academic experience reporting tool, or just drop us a message, tell us what's been going on. And also encourage people to speak with the lecturers. If you're really unsure of what's going to be happening with your lectures, academics, professional staff at the university, they're more than happy to discuss with students and engage in conversations, speak with them, hear from them, and you know, try to find out as much as you can for yourself and for the people that you supported and represented, so that you can then relay that message and encourage other people to do the same, because it's really important that we have ongoing conversations, that we continue to collaborate and work together to make sure that students in the end will be as supported as possible, that we can put as many mitigations in place as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I'll let you go in a second, let Miguel quickly say something on number.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to update as for Kent Youth, because I know a lot of postgrads have asked me about the 5 to 4 update, and I don't know if we're allowed to like say anything about it yet, but yeah, because they just want updates about it, because there hasn't been any news articles shared or anything about it.
And me and Brad actually were discussing that. I think we're making a post soonish to kind of announce it generally after the sort of discussion about Parliament, and also some comments I've had as well from them. So fingers crossed that should be open soon. Outside of this room, discuss that and really it's not complicated.
So just a supporting thing, not all staff members know what's going on. Quite a few of them who are non-union are not allowed to talk with their co-workers because it would construe a violation of union policy. And others just aren't aware because they're not able to keep up with the amount of information coming out. So they do try, but sometimes you might have to notify them yourselves so they can give the full evidence and support.
A lot of stuff will come into work anyway, unless some of the drama department
Under AOB, do we have anything? No? Okay, with that, let's conclude the session. So thank you very much for all of you for attending. We had a pretty successful discussion today. I thank you guys for keeping it civil, respecting each other. At the same time, I'm also grateful that we got a very good discussion out of it. So thank you, everyone, and see you at the next meeting.
Thank you for giving up your time this evening. Appreciate it's been very short notice and not long after the last meeting. So thank you.
But you're very on time. Yeah.
Remember any complaints and some sort of.
Oh, I see the boss.